On this episode, we are a thief in a sleeping town. Gather up all you last wave rockers, because this is Unity music, as we go into the shadows of Operation Ivy and talk about Kamen Rider on Checkered Past, the Ska'd cast.
What the fuck you doing with your life these days? What the fuck you doing with yourself? What the fuck you doing with your life these days? What the fuck you doing with yourself?
What up, Checkerheads? Welcome to Checkered Past, the Ska'd cast with Celine and Rob. And I'm going to apologize for this one right now. The show where a super Aquabat Rad Baron Von Tito and a mighty Boston power skanker explore the history and impact of a different band each episode and hope to bring in new fans along the way. I'm Rob, and this is my sister and co-host, Celine.
That was quite a mouthful.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, wait. I understand what bands you were referencing, but then what was that?
So, the theme this time, because we're doing Kamen Rider today.
Okay,
and
right,
Kamen Rider's a reference to Kamen Rider, the anime, or the whatever superhero Japanese show.
I actually don't know that.
Oh, yeah. And so those were references to other
Jesus
superhero
Christ.
Japanese
Man,
shows.
you just...
Mighty Boston Power Skanker. I was proud of that one. That's a good one.
I'm assuming it's good. You mean like Power Rangers?
Yeah.
Okay, so well, what's the word for those type of shows?
Super Sentai.
Super Sentai.
Super Sentai.
Was
yeah.
Kamen Rider a Super Sentai?
Yeah, Kamen
Okay.
Rider.
Okay.
Yeah, and which means masked rider. And so every season has a different superhero rider rides a motorcycle.
Okay, and then what was the first one?
I forgot. It was I have destroyed it and bastardized it beyond belief.
I was like, what did you even say?
It's some
Can you
other
say it
one
again? Can you just say
no?
It's in front of you.
I know. I don't want to say it though.
Okay,
the words are there.
That's fair.
They don't make any sense.
I understand.
To me, though. Yeah, I created a word salad I can no longer eat.
sloppy salad.
Well, whenever we drop an ep, we have to pick it up where we left off.
Pick it up, where we left off. Pick it up, where we left off.
So, Celine and Joey, you can come on, Mike.
I'm here.
Okay.
He's allowed.
You're allowed.
Second.
Because
like a vampire.
Last night was Joseph Wood's ex-birthday.
Ex-birthday.
I'd insert age here. I don't know if you want it to be a...
No, yeah, but 38.
Nice.
Big old
You know how
38.
sensitive Joey is about
Yeah.
his
So
age.
sensitive.
You don't ask a gentleman about his age.
Luckily, I am not a gentleman.
How are you feeling?
Terrible.
Right.
I'm very hungover, and I sang a lot. And this is the most hungover I've been in like years.
So
for sure.
On the last episode, Celine said that you're not much of a storyteller.
You're not.
And here you are just being a raconteur. I understood exactly what happened last night.
Yeah. So we set up the basement as a karaoke room. If you guys want a real story.
Yes, please.
So
I love when Rob sets you up for a story and you
And
just
then I
like
get-
shut
you
him
get
down with like a word, like
Just
one word.
go,
And he's like,
Joey,
okay, I thought
give
I
me
set
nothing.
you up.
Go,
Yeah.
Joey, give me nothing.
Go, Joey, give us absolutely nothing.
So we set up the basement for karaoke last night and had 10 or so friends come over. And the best part about private karaoke is you can just
Keep
sing,
going.
keep going.
And you can skip. Skip sees no guilt. Be like, nah, that was dumb.
There was a couple times then the singer that came up was like outside smoking or just not around, and it was like, too bad. Put it back in the queue, I guess.
And what kind of tunes were on deck last night?
All kinds, because we
All
do.
kinds.
Hold on, because we do YouTube karaoke. So
Yes.
I was bouncing around all over the place. I was doing some yacht rock. I was doing some Rob Zombie, and then I was doing some. What else did I do?
We did a refused duet.
We did a
and I think
refused
that's
duet.
why my voice is shot.
Yeah.
I didn't even do that on purpose.
We also duetted Fleetwood Mac's "The Chain," which is
Uh-huh.
a classic Celine and Joey.
I always
song.
get to a point that if I smoke and drink, and then I can get in the pocket of a Brody. So I did do some distillers and
Ooh.
and some interrupters, which is as we've discussed in the past, the same voice.
It is the same
And
way.
so, what distiller's track were on deck?
We did Drain the Blood. I did a bunch of Coral Fang because I'm
Did a bunch
a
of Coral Fang.
Yeah, I know. The Hunger, Drain the Blood, and Beat Your Heart Out.
Those are all Coral Fang.
I
Not
know.
just-
It's
not
my
just-
favorite.
not
I
just some Coral
told
Fang.
you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm not judging. That's
You
not
kind
my
of-
distillers.
I know.
Sing
So
Sing
you
Death
are.
has
I
my
know. I
distillers.
know. It's everybody's distiller.
Yeah. It's the people's
But
distillers.
fun was had. There was ice cream cake. There
Yep,
is
there's
ice cream
still
cake.
ice
If you'd
cream
like
cake.
some.
I will eat ice cream cake later.
That's
I
good
will
for
do
your
it.
voice.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cools down the vocal cords.
They gave it to
creams them
children in
up.
the 50s. Ice cream to children when they got their tonsils out, right?
I know that from Archie
It's 'cause
comics.
it's soft.
Yes.
That's where you learned that?
Yes.
That's where I learned
Wow.
most things. That's where I
I-
learned what a jalopy is.
That-
Story time with
Story time's
Joe.
over.
Story time.
time's
We should just call it a new segment. Story time with Joe.
Story time with Joe.
Yeah,
And then we'll get our
Joey
other friend
time.
Joe
No,
to
that
come
doesn't
tell
really
a
work.
story.
our other friend Joe. Yeah,
We have another friend who's Joe. We had a
that's pretty
convers-
shocking to people listening.
We had a
that
conversation
have,
last night about why he's
That's
a
a
Joe
real
and I'm a
Joe.
Joey too, and that was a doozy of a convo.
That's you buried the lead with that story about
Yeah,
your
I know,
friend
right?
Joe. Well, I think it's time to go on to the real stuff.
That's
Yeah,
enough of that.
let's
We have
move
like a
on.
real human being here waiting.
We are thrilled to introduce our guest. He's the Associate Professor of Popular Music and Music Studies for the University of Alberta. Brian Fauteux is here. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the
Hello,
pod.
hello.
Bienvenue.
Great to be here. Merci.
That's like,
Dirty, dirty, yeah.
okay, do you guys want to do this in French?
Meh. Un peu. Now you're making me realize how little French I know.
So Brian, thanks for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate you coming on here. So we'll open it up with our favorite question. Tell us your history with ska music, your checkered past, if you will.
All right. Yeah. So I think like a lot of people of this age and, even listening to some of the older podcasts, there's those kind of key radio hits or like much music videos that kind of were a first experience, like Time Bomb or No Doubt. I even remember something like, I think there was a scene in some movie with Billy Crystal and Robin Williams, Father's Day, that had Mighty Mighty Boston's in it. And that might have been the first time I heard them. So that would have been like kind of the heyday of alternative rock radio and sort of being drawn to that sound a little bit. But everything really intensified in high school, I'd say. Starting to meet people, it was kind of the thing where different people from different elementary schools went to one high school, and then you met people from other areas of your sort of city or town who were further along, perhaps, in kind of knowing about ska and punk bands. And that is when we started to get into bands and play shows. So there was a lot of like local activity. This is all in and around the Toronto suburbs, and there was a pretty
And yeah,
active-
sorry, what year-ish was this?
this would have been like 97, 98 to about 2002, I guess would be the time.
That
I'm
makes sense,
talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of like high school age. And in a lot of like the suburban towns around Toronto, there was like very, very active ska and punk scenes. And this meant that you would like meet other people at these shows. It was kind of a fun thing because you would realize like, oh, I don't need to only hang out with people at my high school. You could kind of meet people from other places at shows on the weekend, kind of around ska and punk music typically, and sort of bond over that interest, but of course start bands and stuff too. So I think that in and around that time, what was probably really formative as well were those like Hellcat compilation "Given the Boot" albums.
Oh,
And
wait, that's my personal
it's like a
big
gateway,
one.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
a big
to like
gateway, 'cause
so
it's-
much music.
so much music. There's so many different styles of ska on those albums as well. Things like "Infested by Choking Victim" and that like one-off Silencers song. I think, is that what they were called? It was like kind of a Rancid offshoot that had that one kind of like haunting ska sound on it. But then all sorts of
Spooky.
other, yeah, very spooky. All sorts of other things too. So all that was happening around the same time, but I think what really got me into it more was starting to play in bands and like moving from sort of your first kind of high school band that was okay to then finding, people from neighboring cities and getting together with some other guys in a band called Five Across the Eye, and we played a lot kind of in and around Toronto, different suburbs and things like that. Playing with some pretty good bands like the Gadgets and Jersey,
Hell yeah.
Leftover Crack,
Nice.
and Two Face. Yeah, there was like so many, but what was cool was that we were kind of on the Yonge Street bus and subway line where I lived and where my bandmates lived. They were a little bit closer to Toronto in Richmond Hill. And then you sort of had the west kind of GO train line into the West 905. And there was like a bunch of ska and punk bands in like Burlington and Oakville, down Mississauga, down that way. And Toronto would be sort of where everyone would come together for shows that weren't like, if we were playing in our hometowns and the smaller places, you'd be on bills with like an industrial band or a rock band and maybe one other.
It was just
punk
like
band.
all alternative music.
Totally,
Just
like all the
counterculture.
weirdos. Yeah,
I feel like that's very Canadian. Like a lot
It
of our
is.
counterculture, just countercultures together. It's not so. I find in like, yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's a little more broken off into groups in other places. And then, yeah, it's just like if you're counterculture, we can all get along for the most part.
yeah, especially around that time too. I think, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was really easy to do that. But then, if we played in Toronto, you'd get on a bill that was maybe all ska or all punk, and playing with bands from other places. So that was a lot of fun. So of course you would go to shows, but you'd also play shows, and a lot of this would kind of go down in person, but you would also have like ICQ and MSN Messenger at that time, keeping in touch with people kind of outside of your high school communities, and just really expanded your sense of the world and your social scene. And all of that was gathered around music, right? That was a point of conversation. And there was just so much activity around ska and punk music in that era. And that's, to credit the people that put on a lot of these shows. There was one individual in like Newmarket, Aurora, named Josh Gottlieb, I think, and he just put on countless shows in things like community halls, hockey arenas. So there was something happening every weekend, and people made that happen, and it brought everybody together. And it's felt like a pretty positive scene, looking back. And some of those bands went on to do big things, like the Flatliners were a few years behind us.
Yeah.
And
That's
actually,
cool.
I think Chris was just on a podcast with George Strombolopoulos a week ago and kind of cited our band as like being formative, which was kind of cool.
That's
just because we were
rad.
a
That's
little
exciting.
bit older. But yeah, everyone sort of had these
That's sweet.
connections, and it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of activity around that. So I think that it was really positive in terms of like community formation, but also getting into music and finding out about music and trying to track down new albums, new bands, as you saw, patches or t-shirts from other people at shows and this sort of thing. So it's sort of just all scaffolded from there. And it was just something that was a lot of fun in terms of like your social life, but also musical development and whatnot.
What was your band?
We were called Five Across the Eye. And
Five Across
actually,
the Eye?
Five Across the Eye. Our bandmate actually just put our one demo we recorded up on YouTube like last year.
Sweet.
It's a bit tough to find, but I think if you search like Five Across the Eye, Bigger Disease was one of the songs that comes up a little bit easier on the search. And I think it was a 5-song demo that we recorded in Scarborough by the bass player from like Closet Monster, and he was in Avril Lavigne's band and stuff. He was in
cool.
a bunch of bands around then. So we spent like a few days in the basement recording that. And then by about 2002, as we went off to university and stuff, things just kind of got put on pause. And it's still been a genre of music I really like, but tastes also evolve and expand. And I kind of went from being, all about this style of music, this scene, to finding interest in all sorts of places, and just kind of developing a really deep love of music that still runs underneath what I do today. I'm kind of, studying and teaching about music and whatnot. But it's still a genre I really like, although I haven't kept up with it as much. So it's fun to sort of find pockets of activity online and get a sense of, who's still making music, playing music. It was a little easy for a while. There was a Sirius XM satellite radio program that Tim Armstrong would do, and I would listen to that every once in a while. And I think he
That's
did
cool.
it with one of his producers or one of the guys from the Interrupters. So they'd always be playing like
Probably
new stuff
Kevin.
too.
Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, it was
Definitely
Kevin.
Kevin. Yeah.
And that was a great way of catching up. But I don't think it runs anymore. So now it's it's a little bit harder just with my day-to-day life and stuff to sort of keep on top of what's new. But I'll keep listening to this podcast, and you guys can keep me fresh. Yeah.
There's a little resurgence happening right now.
Yeah, especially in the US. Like in Canada, we had Amy Gaba, who's out in Toronto, and
We love her. We love her.
She's fantastic. And she did talk about how, like, as exciting as the Toronto music scene is, it's to your point, it wasn't a lot of like ska exclusive stuff happening. It's more like there's just really good bills getting put together with a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And I think she did a lot of her production in the States, like where she found a lot more work, because the US ska scene is like a little bit more free forming right now. But I was going to get your opinion on that, since you came up in early aughts with your band. Canada's ska scene, I feel like the biggest output of music was 95 to 2010. Like, I think had a lot to do with that. Whereas in the US, you'd probably put it back maybe a decade. 85 to 2000 was its biggest output. Do you know if there's a reason why that is? And if maybe it's more because Canada's ska scene just wasn't as radio friendly, or like, because you were in it. So what was your take on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think like I'd probably even if you think of like punk and hardcore, there was some stuff happening in Vancouver, and probably in SNFU and these bands across the country, but certainly nothing like you would have in California or New York. And I think you probably just had more infrastructure and connections and labels and venues that really lent itself well to that more independent form of producing and distributing music, especially if you think about like, that story of Operation Ivy, like getting in a car and traveling to every city. You can't really do that in Canada as easily. And it probably took a little while for some of those releases and records and songs to make their way north and then influence younger people coming up who were drawn to this sort of infrastructure or way of doing things where you could just form a band and put on shows in bowling alleys or hockey rinks. And places like Toronto probably benefit, and bigger cities, Toronto, Montreal. I don't know as much about Vancouver, but you had enough places and cities and towns to support that kind of thing. So you weren't just playing in your, it wasn't just playing in Aurora, Ontario all the time. We were going to Guelph and Waterloo and Toronto and these different neighboring places to make it exciting enough and varied enough. So by the time that, those records really started to circulate, probably in the wake of the success of bands like Rancid and No Doubt and Mighty Mighty Boss Stones and so on and so forth, everything started to grow, and you started to get labels and campus radio stations and all of these things devoted to this type of music and people putting on shows. And for a while, there was a lot of good venues for this kind of stuff. Like if I think of all the places we played in Toronto, they're all gone now, of course. And they're like, fancy furniture stores and whatnot. And all the cities have changed, and you don't have the same critical mass of places to put on, either all ages shows or, stuff from kind of independent alternative culture. It's still there, but these were like downtown, and they were close to the subway line and close to other things. And bands, like I remember the band Spinecracker in Toronto, like seeing them at the Cathedral all the time, and their jam space was around the corner. And this is like Queen and Spadina, Queen and Bathurst. And nowadays that's sort of unthinkable for, a band to have a jam space like right in the heart of the city like that.
Yeah.
So there was just so many places for this kind of stuff to happen. And the fact that so much of it was all ages too was really inclusive for people of all ages to do it. And it wasn't just kids. A lot of these bands were people who were older as well. But everyone kind of got together and was supportive of this type of music at that particular time. And as cities change and as, other things change, it's probably a little bit harder to sustain over time. So there was kind of sweet spot there, I think, where a lot of bands came up at that time and went on to do some good things.
You mentioned all ages show. That's actually something that was brought up online a couple of times about that there is really there's no circuit for an all ages tour. And, that kind of flies in the face of Fugazi or any of those old bands that said, like, we don't charge more than $5 and all shows are all ages. Skank and Pickle, all shows were all ages, right? Like,
Mhm.
what do you think that is? Is it profitability, no space? Like, what happened to the all ages show?
I think a lot of it, I mean, I don't know all the reasons, but I think that probably like cities pay more attention to licensing. And I know a lot of times, like, to have a space that has a stage, you have to have like the right liquor license for it. And I think it's a little harder to have one that allows like young people, minors, past a certain time. Like
Mhm.
a lot of it's like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and it's cut off. So then you look at like, so many of these shows were in places that weren't typically
Like
venues.
halls and
yeah,
skate
like halls
parks
and stuff.
yeah.
And you can do that, but I feel like there was probably more of a need to do that then, because you didn't have like internet culture to like gather and share music. It's like if we don't go to this place and talk to like the kind of parents who run these halls or whatever and put on shows, we have nothing really, right? We don't have a place, an outlet to play. So maybe that was just it meant people had to like put this kind of these shows on in order to socialize and to get out and do stuff. I don't know if that's the only reason, but it could be one of the reasons. And just and the fact that like a lot of these cities now are, as you know, it's much more expensive. The cost of living has gone up. There's way more condos, residential spaces in these cities now, and a lot of what attracts like people to pay high rents doesn't totally map onto like the kind of places that do all ages ska and punk shows. So it's hard to have that sort of critical mass of activity in a city now versus 20 years ago.
That makes a lot of sense. Like
Yeah.
when we think about our community leagues and
Mhm.
stuff, and like the desperation you see with them to get any activity, and the stuff that hits home harder is usually stuff like, I don't know, like, well, in our neighborhood, Rachel Notley's chili cook-off was like the reason why you'd go out, right?
Mhm.
Or beer festivals, I guess,
Yeah.
because now with Edmonton, that's
Or
the
like
whole thing.
farmers markets.
Farmers
and-
markets are like
Totally.
yeah.
becoming a whole thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the all ages hall show, like, I mean, also none of us are getting invited to them. So maybe they are still happening.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
absolutely.
Yeah, we're sitting here wringing our
Yeah.
hands,
We're
wishing,
like, they're gone.
wishing we could hang out with people half our age.
No,
There's
I always
not.
thought it was weird when there's a random 30-year-old at the all ages show at the hall.
Because they were definitely drinking.
Yeah, yeah.
So were the 16-year-olds.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Just the other question I had, and you mentioned Jersey up top there. That was one of the bands we had floated around, but
Mhm.
we couldn't really talk about them because there's no real easy way to access their discography because it's not streaming. So, but you had some thoughts around that the reason behind that with like digital music streaming and stuff. So I want to hear your thoughts about the culture of music we have now, as I think it relates to your studies. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, some of the things I've been looking into lately has been around like campus radio music libraries and what stations have kept their records, what stations have moved to digitize, and some that haven't digitized but have also gotten rid of their collections and have moved to use like streaming services or people's own digital collections. And we've been looking a little bit, and I say we, there's a few researchers that I work with from time to time, Andrew DeWard in San Diego and Brianne Selman in Winnipeg, and some student researchers here. One of the things of our research project was to look at what top charting campus and community radio station albums were not available on Spotify. And there were a fair bit, especially as you work backwards or as you like look to individual local stations. you'd have a bigger kind of, missing component of these albums. So these are like albums that all of the campus stations across Canada are playing quite regularly enough to get on this earshot chart. And we were checking that with what was available on Spotify, and a lot weren't there. So it kind of goes against this idea that, everything is out there in kind of the internet world, and that's great, like this kind of digital utopia. But it isn't entirely the case, especially when you go back in time a little bit. So a lot of these bands that broke up, or the record labels aren't around anymore, or there was nobody who said, I'm going to put these albums on the streaming service, kind of going through these intermediary aggregators that you pay for, that kind of does that work for you. As you work backwards, you realize there's a lot of gaps. So those Jersey records are an interesting example of that. And I mean, some of their more recent ones were pretty popular, like radio play, music videos, but they're not out there. Same with, there was a band around Toronto called Maryland's Vitamins. They're like a really good kind of punk band, and one that, those are sort of the albums I often want to go back to listen to, the Jersey ones, the Maryland's Vitamins ones, and they're not there on streaming. So you can find like YouTube playlists and collections. Some people have put stuff up like that, but it's not in the right order. It's maybe like bits and pieces here and there. So it's kind of a call to pay attention to where these collections are. And I feel like a lot of these radio stations get at least one copy of everything released in that area often. And it's these sort of, enclaves of musical heritage that if they were to be, tossed, they may still be around. People may pick them up and grab them, but they aren't centralized in a way that they kind of are in some of these, radio stations at the moment. So I think it's important to sort of keep them around and think about that, especially stuff from
and
the
keep them
70s,
in
80s,
one
90s.
organized place so they can be like
Exactly.
referenced and possibly digitized at some point. And I'm
Totally.
assuming that with the I don't know, I find when I'm struggling to find a band or an album and you can only find them on a YouTube playlist, like obviously like the sound quality isn't like ideal. So it would be nice,
It's
if
ripped
it
right
was-
from CD if you're lucky.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're lucky. So yeah, I think that as well, like it does matter, the sound quality. So
Totally.
And it's interesting we talk about that from a ska perspective, and I just double checked to make sure I wasn't wrong about this. But the band Me Mom and Morgenthaler, which is a ska band from Canada, when the Planet Smashers were on, when we talked to them, they said that is the most important ska band in Canadian history. It's like there's no King Apparatus, no Kingpins, no Planet Smashers without them. None of their music is on streaming or on Spotify. Just a cover of Racist Friend that they did a couple of years ago, which was like a reunion.
yeah.
Mhm.
Other than that, the only thing that you can get from them is on YouTube, and it's their videos that they shot on like Super 8 cameras in the late 80s, right?
It's like hard
Yeah.
to like tell someone that how good this band is or was, right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
they're like, okay.
Yeah, they're like, they sound great. Where can I even listen to them?
yeah,
right?
it's like
It would be like if
nowhere.
Op Ivy was completely out of print and you couldn't find it anywhere. Like then it would just be all word of mouth, like, whispers and rumors about how great this band was. Which, from a music history standpoint, which is, I guess, what kind of podcast we are, that would be
guess.
super frustrating. I guess, yeah.
I guess.
That's
But I bet there's a lot of those albums kicking around Canada,
For sure.
well, yeah. And then where do you find them? I guess to your point in
But
college
what if you
radio
did like
stations,
or
right?
what if you did like a call to action? What if you were like a radio station and like you had call to actions on like certain bands? Like if
Yeah.
people, you know what I mean? Like drop off an album and we'll
But that's the
we'll
thing.
take it in.
And maybe I'm wrong about this, Brian, but they're trying to get rid of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
to your
they
point,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
to some degree, right?
Yeah, it depends on the station. Like some have been, I did a survey. I asked all the stations to participate, and probably like 40 participated. And lots are like, no, we're never going to get rid of this. Some are like, we're keeping what we have, but we're very selective about what we keep physically
Mhm.
now. Moving
Yeah.
forward. But the newer stuff isn't as critical because there's probably more
Mm.
digital copies of stuff that's coming out now.
Right.
And then others were like, we need the space, because you run into the issue of like student governments sometimes that aren't friendly to these services that cost a little bit of money, or university space. And it's like, you have to continually justify this radio station and taking up
Yeah.
this space in like a student building. And some places are really good about that, especially ones that have a lot of community members involved too.
Right.
And others, they've continually had to fight and battle to like get a little bit of money and to keep their space. And, sometimes if you have like a station director or manager, whatever, that doesn't think the albums need to be there and everything's online, then it's easy to sort of get rid of that. Right. And, I see that point too. It's, I'm sure a lot of the libraries aren't being used all the time by programmers and or for like radio hosts. And a lot of people probably are using their personal collections, but there's kind of that, library heritage, like history component that I think could be something more empathetically written into the licensing framework of these stations, or like, yeah, just because so much of that music it wouldn't probably entirely disappear, but then it's that question of how do you find the people that have the copies of this music and ensure that there's something around to remember it.
There's
right?
no GPS or RFID tokens sitting on top of
And
these
it
albums.
sounds like there's like more of a priority of like pre 2010s music, I guess.
I would even say
2000.
the biggest priorities would be like the things that people get excited about would be on pieces of media that can't even be played easily.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
So things like, I don't know, Edison reels or those types of things would be like considered more archival in nature. Right.
Mhm. For sure.
So more people would get more excited about that because it's something unique.
What was that little tube you could put in the thing and it would play a song? Wasn't that like the
Huh?
first one?
The little tube you can put in the thing.
Yeah,
Like a
like one of
cylinder?
the. Thank you. Yes,
Oh,
a
okay.
cylinder.
Got it.
Yeah. Tinfoil and then wax, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you have some of those?
yeah. Sure.
We should get me, mom, and Morgenthau on that.
Yeah.
Re-release everything on tin cylinders.
The most exciting reissue of all time. So now
The
we're
new
gonna get
vinyl record
into
is tin cylinders.
yeah. Well, they're doing they're
And
doing
the tin
cassettes
cylinder factory is like, we can't keep up with all the orders.
now. Supply chain.
Yeah, supply chain
Supply chain. The
people.
supply chain's really fucking us on this.
Adele's taken all of them.
Vinyl records are plates
Yeah.
now.
So for the Time Scotchine band of the day today, we went and we decided on Common Rider. So what is your history with that band, and why did you think it would be worth talking about?
It's one that like I've listened to, throughout since it came out to now, and I think with a growing appreciation. When I remember when the first record, Last Wave Rockers, came out in 1999, like being really excited about it, but also being into a particular type of like ska and punk, and it wasn't that. And I kind of went from, an initial moment of being like, oh, like I thought it was going to be Operation Ivy 2.0, and it was something different. And there were songs on it I quite liked, but it wasn't a complete album that I loved off the bat. But over time, I've started to like really appreciate both the full length records, and I know there's an EP and a split with Against All Authority as well, and they hold up really well. And it was also one I remember in the early days of like things being showcased on the internet, kind of building anticipation through, I don't know if it was like mp3.com or one of these sites where you could hear the first part of Classics of Love, and really thinking it sounded cool and being excited for this record. And by the time the second one came out, I was probably starting to like vary my tastes a lot more and not only listen to ska and punk music. And I thought it was a great record. So it's those two albums I come back to every once in a while. And I think there's some really good standout classic songs on those albums. And I think, Jesse Michael seems like somebody pretty deliberate in terms of the music or art he does and participates in. And I thought that Classics of Love, the most recent EP that came out in like spring 2020, I think it was fantastic too. This like is much more of a straight up hardcore EP, very short, but I think that's great too. So I think it's sort of it's a couple of albums I've always thought about as being tied to like how do you escape, questions around how do you escape like the legacy of the success of Operation Ivy or even Rancid, and then how do you return and do something that's different but still good, as well as like aging potentially. It sort of seems like growing up ska albums, if you will, versus like some of the earlier stuff in his output, I guess, namely Operation Ivy, because there was a big gap there. But I've always thought of them as kind of albums that are, sound to me like how does ska age, because it can be a bit of a youth-oriented genre sometimes, but not always. But as with punk too, a lot of times they're tougher bands to keep going because there isn't always like the big commercial success that comes with other genres sometimes. So you have bands that don't always sustain themselves, others that find ways to do it. But I thought the sound to be a little more sophisticated, but still like tied to various parts of ska history. Like there's a lot of two-tone there. There's, it doesn't go into punk too much, but it does from time to time. But some callbacks to, all sorts of early music. And I think it's just compelling for a lot of those reasons.
And I think that we'll talk about it, I guess, as we get to the albums, but like Operation Ivy only works because they were all like 16. It doesn't work if they were in their 30s. Like that's why we keep on the show saying, they toy with the reunion. We say, nah, no, don't do it. It's not for us.
It was good when it was good.
It was good when
and
it was
it is good. And it holds up.
And then Common Rider probably works best because of the point in time that those members were in that band, right?
Yeah. Dude, I think one thing that it also seems like it's kind of interesting because I think they're really good records and there's some great songs there, but there almost seem to be like I don't know what the word is, almost like they weren't all in. I don't know. It's like there was
they were like holding back or something a little, a little like, restrained.
Like this, release these records, but we're not gonna, release music videos or tour beyond the States. And it kind of sounds, especially on the first record, like these are songs that Jesse Michaels wrote, and he got some really talented players in the rhythm section to come together and record this album, but in a way that sounds like really polished and really clear. But maybe, and I could be wrong, it could just be, it doesn't sound to me like they played together a lot, or that it was a band that formed and wrote these songs together and they grew. It sounds kind of like three players coming together to bring these songs to life in a way that still sounds really good, but maybe misses some of that like cohesion or energy or vibe that comes with
possibly less collaborative.
Yeah, less collaborative. Mm-hmm.
At least in the like forming of the songs.
It seems to be Jesse Michaels' like modus operandi though, is like to have bands that he's only with for like 2 years. He doesn't really like have a lot of staying power in any one group. So like I think he was in Common Rider longer than he was in Operation Ivy.
That's wild.
If you think about it from that perspective. So why don't we get into it? Let's take the time ska sheen back to 1989. Joey, do we have the
Brent?
We don't.
Yeah,
Joey, you have to get on.
I was too hungover to master it. Sorry.
Oh darn! We'll put it in post.
Excellent. Oh yeah,
we can put it in post. Yeah,
we have a new Time Ska Sheen theme that we're going to debut, so this will get cut out
very good,
in favor of the actual song. So the Time Ska Sheen takes us back to 1989 at the collapse of Operation Ivy. Some of the sources that I had are my usual suspects: AllMusic, Discogs, a little bit of Wikipedia, and there's not much on there. But I really took a lot from several punk news articles and Jesse Michaels' interview with Inc. 19 that had a lot of stuff around Common Rider. So there's going to be a lot of firsthand accounts from Jesse that I pulled from. But before we go into 89, let's go back before Operation Ivy to really talk about Jesse Michaels and his journey, as we only really scratched the surface on our first episode. And we also just spent all of September talking about Rancid. So Jesse Michaels first started playing music when he was 12 years old, where he had a real obsession with Flipper.
The movie?
Yeah.
Like the dolphin?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was called Dolphin.
It's a good movie.
It was called Dolphin Core. And his first band was called, it was the band.
Love it.
The band. I don't know how long I was going to do that for.
Dolphin Core?
Dolphin Core. His first band was called Sag, and he couldn't play guitar very well. In fact, he played it with his thumb. Joey is giving me the look about which thumb is he playing with. His voice. He was 12, so his voice hadn't changed yet either. So if you want to imagine just a noise punk band with a prepubescent boy playing guitar with his thumb, you're getting the right idea.
Weird.
He got kicked. He got kicked out of the band for smoking too much pot. His family
Classic.
moved to Pittsburgh. SAG would keep going, though they would change their name to Crimp Shrine, if anybody's familiar. No?
Crimp
Shrine? They're like a classic Berkeley. They're like the OG Gilman band. Yeah. So anyway, you should listen to them. You'd like them. That's a Joey band. Crimp Shrine is right up your alley.
I hate how many times you said Crimp Shrine.
Crimp Shrine. It's fun to say. Try it.
Is it? I know. I don't like saying
Oh,
it.
okay. So Jesse would be highly influenced by them continuously because he kept seeing them be successful, and he was in their band, so he was just obsessed with how good they were doing. But while Jesse was in Pittsburgh, he moved over to become obsessed with crossover, especially Cro-Mags and DRI.
I love Cro-Mags.
Do you?
Yeah.
I saw them live one time, and I've never been more terrified in my whole life.
It's an aggressive crowd.
That's an aggressive crowd.
It's an aggressive crowd.
That's an aggressive crowd.
You should be scared.
Yeah, for some what they are. What's the religion? The Hare Krishnas.
Oh yes, Hare Krishna.
So there's all these like jacked up,
Yeah.
bald Hare Krishna dudes
Yep.
just wailing on each other. It's a lot.
Did you know most of that religion is saying Hare Krishna?
Yes.
So interesting. 'Cause that's like all
Is
like
that-
it's a
is that-
lot of just saying
was that a
Hare
Celine?
Krishna. Yeah, that's a Celine.
That's a Celine. He would form a band called Screaming Outlash, but they wouldn't last, and Jesse would try his hand at drums, of which he also couldn't play well. Pittsburgh scene was tough to get into, as most of it was 21 and over, and he was still very much a teenager. Eventually, his family would move back to Berkeley, and the story continues from there. Here's a quote from Jesse on his approach to writing positive music. The thing about it, though, is that you have to be careful when you're trying to be positive because it can easily turn sugary, sweet, and corny. So my goal when I'm writing is to keep things positive and hopeful without getting into bullshit optimism. My favorite thing about punk is that it's real. I would rather listen to a truthful band that's negative and dark than a sugary, sweet, bullshit, happy band. But on the other hand, when you can combine some positivity and also have that raw edge, I think that makes music exciting.
I agree.
Me too. I generally listen,
like
I feel like
that.
I generally listen to positive music.
Yeah.
I'm not that much of a nihilist. No, I am, but I don't like nihilistic music. So fast forward back.
Was that a Rob in it?
That was a Rob Bennett. Right in my head. Fast forward back to the death of Op Ivy in 1989, with most of the band choosing to essentially continue without singer Jesse Michael in the form of ska punk band Downfall. Jesse was left to his own devices. A lot of his time was spent going to school, but he also made sure to keep his fingers in the pulse of the local music scene. He struck up a close friendship with fellow Berkeley band Green Day, in particular with their foul-mouthed pothead lead singer Billy Joe Armstrong.
Oh yeah, I was like, which one? The whole band?
Yeah,
I guess you can.
just Billy Joe.
There's three.
So Billy Joe and Jesse were tight.
Three big ones. Three main ones.
Yeah, three main ones. There was only the three.
Is there only three members in Green Day?
Correct.
So okay.
So there's Billy Joe.
You know what?
Trey
I
Cool
don't know what.
and
I
the third
literally,
guy.
I was so in my brain
Mike.
about ska. I was like,
Thanks,
there's
Joey.
one horn and there's one. I was like, where's the bass? Anyways, it doesn't matter. Three members of Green Day.
That's right.
To be fair, though, Green Day has like a full-time other guitar
They
slash
must.
keyboard guy. live
Yeah.
now, for sure.
There must be a floater.
Is it Kevin?
Ha,
might be.
Might be.
Might be.
could be.
Where did I
Anyway.
leave off? All right, where?
Great, they're friends.
Jesse-
He was
oh,
friends
he's
with
friends with
all
Green
of
Day,
Green
right.
Day, specifically Billy Joe
Billy Joe,
Armstrong,
thank
the
you.
pothead, the
Foul-mouthed pothead lead
pothead
singer.
singer.
Jesse was even brought in to draw the art for 39 Smooth, and also penned a song or two for the Kerplunk sessions, maintaining his relationship with the Lookout roster. By 1993, he had amassed enough of a friendship in the scene to start a new project, the very short-lived Big Rig. They would do a handful of gigs and release one EP before unceremoniously breaking up. This is Jesse's quote in regards to the 10-year break between Big Rig and Common Rider. Well, 10 years is a long time. I don't know why it took 10 years. It's a complete mystery to me. I did some school. I did a lot of dumb shit that people in my generation in their 20s generally do. For a while, I studied martial arts. I basically just
Was that the dumb shit? In
I
his
guess
20s?
so. I was thinking about my 20s and all those times where I'm like,
I know. What is he
me and my friends are
implying?
just- yeah.
I would think he's implying drugs, but
I studied martial arts means I did a lot of heroin. I basically just tried out different things. I moved around a lot and I had relationships. All right. Just the normal stuff that you do in your life. Basically, after
Okay.
Op Ivy from 20 to 26, it was a rough period in my life. I was just a crazy punk rocker.
yeah.
I don't want to put my business out on the street, but I'll say that I got into some fucked up shit. But I did manage to come through it. And I think that some of the positivity on the Common Rider record is because of that. So this was enough of a reason for Jesse to focus totally on his studies. So he knuckled down and graduated with his BA in literature from UCLA in 1996.
Good for him.
Yeah. He became infatuated with non-musical art while still channeling his punk roots. He would also lend his artistic talents to bands like Filth, Neurosis, and Against All Authority. The musical bug would not leave him for long, and by 1999, he was ready for his next band that would be a supergroup of sorts with him in the lead and guitar, of which he learned to play in the 90s for this band. Squirt Guns, Mass Giorgini on the bass, and Screeching Weasels, Dan Lumley on the drums.
That's sweet.
And Mass Giorgini is a pretty big producer in his own right. So that's probably why the Common Rider records sound good, because he produced them all. Pulling in their contacts at Lookout, they put together an energetic ska reggae track list to put out 1999's Last Wave Rockers that features a minimalist soundscape matched with Jesse's trademark biting commentary and wordplay. Before we listen to some tracks off that album, I just want to read a quote from the Pitchfork review of that album. Don't get me wrong, this stuff is as tasty as vanilla ice cream, but it's still just vanilla ice cream.
Oh. Shade.
Pitchfork.
The shade rattle.
Pitchfork in 99, still
Shade
doing it.
rattle.
Shade, rattle, and roll.
It's like the sound on RuPaul's Drag Race where
okay.
drama happens and it just sounds like a little echoey rattle.
Oh.
It's the shade rattle.
I like it.
Yeah,
good,
we'll get the sound bite. We'll get it.
So let's talk about it. Last Wave Rockers.
Okay.
Brian, what are your thoughts?
Oh.
Celine, you wanted to jump in.
I just didn't know what your situation with Common Rider was. I didn't know.
What my situation was?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. 1 second, Brian.
No, go for it. I want to hear too.
Sorry, Brian.
Celine has a question.
I'm really hungover.
My old guitarist, a guy named Chad, who
Yeah.
put the Chad back in psychedelic. He would say this, and I always thought it was the most outrageous comment when I was in the band, that Common Rider is better than Operation Ivy. And he would say it all the time.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
Not necessarily. I feel like it's
Some.
Yeah, I feel like there is a rabid fan base
Of course.
of Common Rider. And so I listened to the This Is Unity music, their last one, first, and then went back to listen to this one. So I would say, without tipping my hat too much,
Yeah.
I like the latter more for various reasons. But this is still enjoyable.
And as usual, I'm a cherry picking daddy. I just kind of had songs here and there. What is your Brian?
How do you feel about Last Wave Rockers?
This album?
I think that I agree. I find things come together more for the second album, but this one has sort of its own kind of sonic aesthetic, and I think that's a good thing in some ways. There's not a lot that sounds like this album, but it may be part of the reason why it holds me back from going all in on it too. I think that it's almost too good sounding. I don't know. It's I almost would love to hear some of these songs with a bit more dirt on them.
Yeah.
It's so clean, and I don't mind that on the drums as much. I feel like the bass is second to a really loud guitar, and I don't love the guitar tone on some of the songs. It's very prominent. It kind of, it seems to support a singer-songwriter mode of delivery where you got Jesse's poetic kind of he's got his degree now and the lyrics are solid, and he's learned the guitar, and it I feel that energy there. But when it comes together, that's still there, but also you're trying to like put this rhythm section in. And I feel like that just the sort of production component might be part of the reason why, I'm a little hesitant to say it's, better than Operation Ivy, or that I like it more than the second record. But some of the songs I really, really like, and, Classics of Love and Signal, and Rough Redemption, they're all solid. Like even Classics of Love, it sounds like one that could, if they wanted to, and maybe it was, I don't know, but it could have been in a commercial or like a movie or something. Like it seems to have been written to sort of have that universal appeal. So there's some really solid moments throughout the album, but it's not totally consistent either. There's a lot of variation there, and kind of the last part gets more into like a sort of folksy, rocky kind of love song moments, which I'm totally cool with. I love those like last songs too. But it almost feels like, it's sectioned off at the end in a strange sort of way. And sort of more top heavy with the stronger kind of ska songs. But it's good. It's, a lot of great two-tone influence, and the rhythm section is really strong. I like the lyrics. I think it's overall a really solid album, but I think there's things that come together for the second, probably just that they played together longer and started to feel each other out more, that sort of, click on the second album. But
because to their credit, it's the same lineup throughout the whole brief career of Common Riders, the same three, same trio.
Yeah.
We should listen to Classics of Love since we got it right up here.
At one, was sitting and thinking of all the beautiful things he could have become. Instead of a lyrical,
I feel like people love playing this song.
This song's a jam. Yeah, this is
good. It is good.
Yeah.
This has always been around. You know what though? Chad was also my friend, so maybe this was just around.
Yeah. He's like rapping.
Yeah.
Thing he does on Common Rider.
No faking Jamaican.
No fake. Specifically
Jamaican.
avoiding the fake.
Yeah, like you can tell, mindful.
Yeah.
Shining down on a cloudy day. I know that song's gonna last forever. That's what I say. And two, I'm running
That's
around
the
in my mind, and my mind's a fucking
guitar
zoo.
tone
One
with
of the
it's kind of almost like a garage rock, maybe a grunge almost.
I was gonna say this has like a 90s grunge vibe, especially in the chorus. That like alt rock 90s sound.
Yeah, the alt rock
Alt rock
influence.
90s, yeah.
They're very much the pace of their songs is also a little bit more mid-tempo. Also that drum fill is cool.
It's really good.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I don't mind that song sounding
No.
clean for some
No.
reason. That works like sounding as cleanly produced as
It's
it
like
does.
it's like
I
track
agree.
one. They really like put
I like that song a lot.
arguably the
Yeah.
best song right
It's
up front.
nostalgic too.
Yeah, that's a great tune.
It is.
What else? You also had mentioned Rough Redemption. I have that one queued up too. We should give that
Sure.
one a listen. Yeah. Oh yeah, because it had a horn solo, which is really cool. I also like that it's not explicitly ska, it's not explicitly reggae. The way they do the guitar is kind of like its own thing. Probably because Jesse is self-taught as a ska musician, and he's not really referencing anything except for what he listens to.
This horns is low key going off though.
Oh yeah, it's
Hey?
fucking fire.
I feel like the bass really drives this one too. It's
I'm just looking up who's playing saxophone, because I actually don't know.
Just kicking back, fucking around with the girls. I don't smoke weed, not trying to save the world. I ain't got too little.
Sounds
and
like
I
A
a
ain't
Celine
got
line.
lyricist,
much.
yeah.
Doesn't fall, life come rough. People come together, demonstrate the sound. This is unity music, so lay your burden down. Test your ambition, but don't try to test my skill. Cause I'm thinking about all the people I've had on the suckers I've verbally killed.
That's a lot of words to say. I like this part. It has like a good groove. The timing of the vocals.
So the sax player is a guy named Ken Vandermark, who apparently is a accomplished saxophonist and clarinetist.
Ha.
Okay.
There's that's all.
Every picture of a saxophonist just looks like the Lost Boys guy. Like no matter what, it just I'm like, oh, is that literally a clip from Lost Boys? And like, no, it's just a guy playing a saxophone in a nightclub, but it just always looks like that.
Look at this guy's flannel shirt. This is good for the podcast.
He's a cool guy.
What do you think, Celine? How are you feeling?
I actually like those 2 songs. Like are fucking jams.
Yeah,
Those are good. I like Common Rider.
it's pretty laid back.
I never
like
have
that.
been a like listen front to back album with them, and rarely any bands, but I am curious like if I would enjoy it now.
You know, now
I
that
just
I'm
had it
thinking
on
about
at work, so I'm like I wasn't paying super attention to each song.
we were talking about Sublime on a recent episode. I wish Sublime sounded like this.
It's like Sublime could have been.
Yeah,
Joey's crying.
Joey's crying.
Joey
Joey
loves
should have had a Common Rider tattoo. The circles.
Joey has a Sublime tramp stamp.
Well, that's fine. I'm all good with that.
Yeah.
I feel like there's maybe like even on Classics of Love, it's kind of got that like, post Sublime. There's like a bit of that there too. Kind of like there is a bit of that hip hop element. It's like, there's commercials. Like you can tell that both ska and punk are kind of in a commercial like boom at this time. Like just with the way the production sounds. And that's why I'm kind of surprised that, but it's probably more to do with, Jesse's outlook on and sort of what music is for. But these songs probably could have like gone out there and been sort of more commercial if they wanted to, like, especially Classics of Love. But again, no music video, nothing really promotional about it.
And knowing what we know about Jesse, there's no way he would have been into that, right?
No,
like, I think that
exactly.
would have been, like,
But he can write a
antithetical.
catchy song. I find
Yeah.
this Common Rider songs
It's
are
a good
like
song,
hella catchy, like just earworms.
It's hooks.
Earworm
Hooks for days.
and hooks.
Yeah.
Yeah. They know how to make like a banger. So like you said, I do believe if they pushed, they absolutely could have been probably as big as they wanted to.
I think they have
at that
crossover
time.
potential because they're not so exclusively ska.
Yeah.
They don't sound like, oh, this is definitely
They could
a
be on
ska
a radio
band.
rock,
Yeah.
like alternative rock radio station.
They got the, Il Scarlet had that crossover.
Yeah.
They could have had that kind of thing.
Unfortunately.
I queued up one more song because it's kind of not ska. I put Rise or Fall so we can listen
If it's
to
fucking cake.
that. I would not do that to a guest.
I'd be gone.
He keeps trolling us with cake. Anyway,
I don't know what you're talking about.
shut up.
Sitting in my mother's arms, inches from a woolly farm. 10 years later, 5 a.m.
I love this song. Song's a
Alcoholic Helen then. Rise and fall.
This one's more like anthemic,
and even this is like the most punk rock they get.
Yeah.
And it's still not like,
super punk. It's not crazy punk, but it is.
but it's not like ultra fast skate punk.
It's not. It's easy listening punk, like a Rancid, right?
Yeah.
It is crazy though that literally just a tempo change can make it like mainstream versus not.
Yes.
Kind of interesting.
That's why Ramones played all the
Yeah.
albums.
Well, I was just thinking
over
about
and over again on
Rancid
the
too. If
radio.
they were like twice as fast, I don't think they'd be as big.
It's true. I feel that,
I'd like
yeah.
them more.
You like them a lot.
I
That's what you
did.
just
It was
said.
fine. I liked them.
That's where we landed on that. Jesse Michaels, for the record, he likes Rancid. Anyway, he supports his
like-
friends.
There's even in the lyrics, like there's so many Rancid isms across this too, like so many radio references or like, buses and things like that come up in Rancid songs too, like this kind of attention to infrastructure and media that Rancid is always talking about too. Like I was
Attention
To infrastructure.
is the
Yeah, I
best
love
review
that.
of Rancid I've ever heard.
There was a building.
Yeah,
Like-
I'm on this bus.
Yeah, attention to infrastructure.
He's
The
like-
Chinese theater. Yeah.
I always wanted him to be reading Tim Armstrong to read off like your Google Maps directions because he's always like telling you how to get around Sun City.
All right, that's
I
awesome.
think a lot of people would enjoy that.
And with that, I think it's time to take a break. And when we get back, more Kamen Rider.
What the fuck you doing with your life these days? What the fuck you doing with yourself?
Welcome back to Checkered Past. Celine and Rob here talking with Brian Fauteux about Kamen Rider. We just finished talking about Last Wave Rockers, and we're going to pick up the story from there. So we just released the Vanilla Ice Cream album, but it would be big enough draw that Jesse was able to focus on the project full time because he didn't think it would be anything other than a one album kind of thing. But now it's clear that the band needed to tour, which was difficult because they actually multi-tracked a lot of the guitars. So they had to road test it. And in 2001, they had actually put together a more kind of, what do you want to call it? Like a compartmentalized version of the band with Billy Joe Armstrong attending on guitar. And they would make an EP called A Thief in a Sleeping Town. Lookout would put it out on 7-inch vinyl, and now that vinyl is considered a collector's item. I believe you can still stream it. I think that's where I heard it. But this is probably, if you were a punk fan, an Op Ivy fan, this is probably what you were hoping Kamen Rider sounded like. So why don't we open with the first track, and then we'll talk about it a little bit if anybody's listened to it, but I might have been the only one that didn't. So, okay. Yes. All right. The song is called Am I on My Own?
Somebody told me it was just too late and the world sealed up like it's doom. But in the cherry grip, the living still kicking, get some more until the end comes true. Am I on my own? Won't you come along with me? 'Cause we could be the ones to fight us by betray. 2 hands clenched on the very last thread. That's a one more
Sweet.
than we
Yeah.
Not mainstream though.
No. The bass sounds a lot more verbally, I don't know what to call it, way less clean.
And the vocals are way more punk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's catchy as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a badass little riff.
It's good.
I like that. I never listened to it until we
I've
started.
never, yeah.
And so we did the prep for this because I barely even knew it existed.
Same.
It's
That's
good.
a 6 songs,
Mhm.
so I'm sure I'd like the EP.
4.
4. 4,
Four.
6 songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, what do you think, Brian?
I really liked it too. I never heard it before until I was like checking out what was available to sort of brush up for this, and I thought it was really good. I thought that the cover doesn't really match the sound. Like it has like a little boy on it, and it's very
That's funny.
yeah, it's colorful and very clean design.
It's got very
No, that's
dashboard
the
confessional.
Offspring's
Yeah.
album cover.
There's a little boy.
The little boy on the swing, very colorful.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
I know.
But-
About that. I knew you were talking about that.
But it kind of does have that like when early Green Day, or like what they could do when they were writing a more aggressive punk song. It sort of has that like fast but melodic sound to it, especially with like the tight drums and stuff. It does remind me of that a bit too.
Yeah, I wonder if they were almost writing this to show that they could write it, or because I mean they didn't make a full length out of it. They just wanted to put some songs together to see if they could like ram something down your throat in a couple tracks, and I think they do a great job. Yeah,
Same.
It was rammed down my throat.
gross, very gross. Let's.
You said it.
Yeah, I know. All right.
I know.
So I do have the title track queued up as well, so we can give that a little listen.
Started running just as soon as my feet hit the ground. Everyone's looking
Not
for
rapping.
something, and it's
No.
Singing more. Yeah. Actually, this is kind of what Classics of Love sounds like.
Yeah.
Very similar to this, like the band Classics of Love.
This is pretty straight street punk to me, in a good way. Like, but straight up street punk to me.
I like the backing vocals.
almost a 77 element in it.
Yeah.
The way the like guitar sounding to me is like very 77. I don't know. Or maybe just the writing.
Those drum fills are fun. Yeah. Damn, that's good.
It's good.
It kind of has like a snottiness to the way he's like saying the lyrics, you know?
Yeah.
Which I like.
Yeah.
He's got more attitude. Some tude.
Too much attitude. Somebody
Too
said
much
that.
attitude.
Yeah, that's all I really had on the EP. Any other final thoughts? It's a good punk rock EP. Just hit it and go.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, I'll listen to the other 2 songs, I guess.
So far, you've committed to.
I've listened to 50% of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far, you've committed to listening to pretty much all their songs.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, you're feeling good about it.
yeah. I'm one album. I'll listen to. I'll pay attention to the album. I'm a hairstylist. So I'll put it on in the salon, but it kind of just depends. But then I only ever really attach to like familiar songs I've learned. So I'm just like, well, what were the other songs? And I'm like, oh yeah, that one. And then I'll pay attention only to the songs I already know, and then like kind of tune out when I don't know the song, even if it's good. Anyways, yes.
All right. So we'll continue the story. So with Lookout's collapse, Jesse began shopping out a label for Common Rider's follow-up. Because right around this time would have been when, and I think we talk about it on the Operation Ivy episode, so go back and listen. We talk about Lookout Records from Soup to Nuts when they collapsed in the early aughts, late 90s. But thanks to his connection with Against All Authority, we bring them back, so he drew all their artwork for a couple releases. They got a hookup with Hopeless Records that has a small, Hopeless as the Screamo label. That's what they're most known for. But they had an odd assortment of ska bands on there, including Against All Authority, and Mustard Plug was a Hopeless band. Yeah, very weird. Joey's giving me the that's weird look because it is weird. And then also Common Rider. But they were more than willing to put out music by Jesse and his group, and it probably had a lot to do with like how Yao put out Jesse Michaels' music. Like I bet you anybody would have at the time. And this just seemed to be the good fit. So this is a far more intentional, polished affair. Jesse will grab some other friends, including Audrey Mars from Bratmobile, Philip Hall from Teen Idols, and Matt Skiba of Alkaline Trio. So there's some pretty big hitters on there. Common Rider put together what would be their most ambitious album yet, titled This Is Unity Music, which is a reference to one of their old songs, which carried the band's trademark darkened reggae with riff-oriented punk and just a little bit of ska here and there. So here's some quotes that I pulled in regards to the record. So here's from Jesse. One interesting point about that was the day before we recorded the song Cool This Madness Down for the record. And in the song, there was an entire verse that had an extended metaphor about someone working in a large tower, which represented consumer society. And every night the person would get done building the tower, it would crumble to the ground. I'm sure you remember the big hoopla after that happened. Everybody was running around changing and taking songs off records, and I did the same thing. I took that verse out because I didn't want the verse to be construed as a reference to September 11, because it was 2001.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Right. And then this is the Punk News review of the album, which goes like this. It's not quite punk, it ain't really ska, and at times it's almost reggae. All I know is that it is better than anything else out there. Buy this album. Fuck it, goddamn steal this album.
Whoa.
Whatever it takes. Who cares if it ain't Op Ivy? Nothing is. Jesse Michaels is back, and Common Rider is the freshest sounding band that I've ever heard. This is Unity Music. Will have you checking your pulse and wondering why the fuck haven't I been listening to these guys for the last 3 years?
That is much better than the Vanilla Ice Cream.
That is a contemporary review of the album. It's pretty glowing, I would say. I don't remember how many stars it got. I'm going to assume all of them.
Yeah, however many were available.
And so let's talk about This Is Unity Music. So I'm just going to say it. It fucking rules.
This is very
good. It
good.
is so fucking good.
This is, I feel like, what people will like put on.
Yeah, there is not a missing song on this. I think it's like as good, if not better, than anything else that was coming out, ska or not, around this time. So glowing review or not, I tend to agree. This is one of my favorite punk and ska records ever. So before we get into a discussion, let's start with they talked about Cool This Madness Down, so that's an easy song.
Well, what
to
is
start with.
about Brian? Does this hit home for you?
Yeah,
As an album?
oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Totally. I think one thing that was I mentioned a bit before that I think it comes together a little more nicely than the first record, and it could just be that the first one was all these songs that maybe he had written in that 10-year period, getting those out, and then sort of moving on to new stuff potentially that's just fit well with the other players at the time. But hearing that EP is kind of cool now because you hear that sound filling out a little bit, and it seems like they're all clicking really well, and that carries through so nicely on this album. And I think both are really great in terms of songwriting, but this one is, I think, a better representation of what they could do in terms of not only writing good songs, but playing together too.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, do you want to play
Cue?
Cool This Madness Down, and then we'll keep talking about it. Hit it.
Keep talking about how much everyone loves it.
That's the only thing you're allowed to say about it.
That's fair. Good music's good music.
It's mixed a lot better.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I
Definitely
think
cleaner than the EP, but
Yeah.
more like dual guitars too.
Yes. That's those hooks.
it's just so catchy. It's like
insane.
a pop song, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like just as catchy as any pop song. That's super impressive songwriting.
That was a contemporary opinion of Opera Ivy. Had the same thought, was like that the reason why people liked them so much is because they were the best pop songwriters.
Basically,
Yeah.
but then they play
Punk
punk.
or ska, but they played punk and ska
Yeah.
music. It just so
Yeah.
happens that they were the best pop songwriters.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a certain like attention to the hooks and the melodies that it makes it really stand out and lets it last across time quite well.
Yeah, like I get the punk attitude is like it doesn't have to be catchy, and it's like, but I don't know. For me, it does.
Mhm.
It's more enjoyable.
And so the other thing with this album, so I listed a few people who performed on this, but there's a lot of guest vocals. Like they have a lot of people in the background.
They had a lot of buds in the studio.
Yeah, a lot. Like basically the entire Lawrence Arms is backing them. I was gonna say, oh, sorry, who else do I have here? A lot of people from Slapstick, so not just. I was gonna say Matt Skiba. He was the only Alkaline Trio not from Slapstick, but a lot of Slapsticks on this album. Yeah, and I think that also is kind of cool about it is that there's the whole main band, but they were intentional about those multi-guitar sounds, all the backing vocals. It's much more like an intentional studio effort as well, not just like, to your point, a singer-songwriter attitude, right?
Yeah, and I think that that's keyboards and horns too and stuff. But I think that filling it out with that added the more guitar parts and bringing in more vocals, it just sort of where there seemed to be gaps between all the players and instruments on the first album, everything sort of mixes well on this one.
I love it.
They're playing like a team on this album.
Yeah, they're playing like a team. Exactly.
Yeah.
They're actually playing like a team this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
It's not the Jesse Michaels show.
What other songs do I have here? Let's do Small Pebbles. That's one of my absolute
That's a great
favorite
one.
songs.
I saw you burning in a starlit night, just like a pantheon of comets in flight. Time, a place, a place, no matter. Now listen to an idiot chatter.
Yeah, just having that lead line over the rhythm line, it sounds really great.
So tight.
I love this song.
Truth be told,
Just made it on the iPod in high school.
And he's a really solid lyricist.
Totally.
Fills the page with words and very
Yeah.
specific about it.
For sure.
calling all stones, calling all streams, one piece, many many parts, undivided in a dream. Move it out now, step into the heat. This will be the era where the people trust seek. Small pebble, some small stone. No place to call your own. Walk out to the dark just to watch the wave roll. So rebel, a passion unknown. Don't let your dreams go cold.
And that song
I
has
love
like
that one.
that song has a build, and then it like they bring in like the saxophone at the end, and it just like gets sort of like more grand as the song progresses, which I love that. Yeah, some solid hooks in there.
Solid song. It's the complete package.
It really is.
It
You.
is.
Hey, ram it down your throat. Why don't you? Ram that complete package down your throat. Okay. Anyways, Weekend. I'm so sorry. Please do not sue us.
Joey, what are you thinking so far? I haven't gotten your thoughts.
I like it.
Thank you, Joey. This has
Thanks,
been
Joey. A storyteller he is.
Yeah. Whoa. Freaking Mark Twain over here.
Honestly,
Paid by the word.
The production on this one's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like I really liked the EP. For me was kind of more, as Celine said, kind of 70-70 production. Like the bass tone was really like mid heavy, really honky. It's just like that, and that's kind of the style. That's what the 77 sort of punk sound really was. This is way more filled out sounding. Like the rhythm section is fucking killing it.
They have a tight rhythm section.
Yeah,
They do.
like
Yeah.
they're by this album, the rhythm section is working together much better than the other. Well, I mean the EP was kind of in the middle, but like in comparison to the first record, this one is a way tighter affair. I think now that I've heard a couple of tracks, I do think I would dig the out there-iness of this record.
Yeah.
Because the writing clearly is just fucking going for it.
Yeah.
Like they just had cool ideas and thoughtfully put them into song, like, which is very cool to be able to hear rather than just being like, hey, we wrote a song,
Absolutely. Like we don't have any songs queued up from it, but they did a split with Against All Authority a little bit later. That was kind of like a swan song of theirs, which was made up of their contributions were like outtake songs from this album. And they are significantly worse. It is a noticeably worse affair. And like, I think they truly, all killer, no filler, like picked out the exact songs that should go together to make it a complete record. And didn't do the Real Big Fish thing where they just like wrote as many songs as possible and shoved every single one on there. Right. So I think that also makes it a more enjoyable affair.
How many songs in total between that EP and this album?
So I think there was 4 on the split, and then there was 12 on this one, I believe.
Okay, so they went in the studio with 16 or 17 songs or something like that. That's that, yeah, and then put a dozen on the album.
Yeah,
that's
did it
how
right.
you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, it feels really intentional, right? Like the ones that are on there. I think there was one on that split where the waves are the highest that I thought was pretty decent, but the others certainly not at the level of what's on This Is Unity Music.
Right. And so let's close out our discussion with the album with one of my personal favorites, 1 Ton. I don't know what you call this, where you're playing ska, but it's not ska.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird.
The rhythm's still there.
Walk through a beehive, never get stung.
It's a banger.
Yeah.
It's a certified banger.
Certified.
It's a certified banger.
Yeah, the chorus goes hard.
Yeah. I fucking love a whoa, whoa, whoa. You know?
Yeah.
I'm taking my take. Nobody move, nobody gets stung. 1 ton, song, happier than the sun. Wave pattern, Wyatt, hit the set, no damage done. Rocking the ground, I'm back in the dance, we're rocking them up in the front. Let's say 1 ton, 1 song, 1 little step, 1 destination. Whoa.
It's fun trying to make that hard. Like, it sounds cool when they say it. It just doesn't sound cool when I say it. Agree aggressively.
I think my last thoughts on it is, if there's anybody listening who hasn't listened to Common Rider, it's not a lot of tunes out there. Just give all 2.5, 2 and 2.5 ones. Give them a listen. It's worth a listen. I don't want them to be forgotten to time because Jesse Michaels can't be bothered to promote anything.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely slipped under the radar for some people for sure.
And honestly, too many Op Ivy covers these days. Do some Common Rider covers.
Yeah.
It's making me want to go back and listen to all the songs and not just casually listening.
Would you
and
say this is
phoning it in.
would you call this one of the good bands we've covered?
It is one of the good bands we've covered. Yes, I've been having some spicy takes lately. Do you have any final thoughts, Brian?
The only one that I was thinking about today was like 3 of the songs we played, One Ton and Rough Redemption and Classics of Love, like those parts where he does sing really fast. Like he's got pretty good flow. And I was thinking about like, there was some reference to the Transplants coming up on like 20-year anniversary or something. And I was like, I wonder what the Transplants would have sounded like with Jesse Michaels instead of Skinhead Rob. Like somebody who could actually like
that would actually be very good.
Like,
I would be different.
Seems like he'd be a better, like, you know, whether it's rapping or something close to that. It'd be funny to hear that. But
who's a better rapper, Skinhead Rob or Cool G Rap?
I don't know. Definitely probably not Skinhead Rob.
Definitely probably not Skinhead Rob.
All right.
Great answer.
That does it. That's Common Rider. Jesse Michaels would go on to do other things, but maybe we'll save that for another episode if there's enough material. What? He was on a Bruce Lee band thing.
Was he?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. And he put out those Classics of Love records.
What's he doing now?
Classics of Love.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But even that, he's not doing it a lot.
No.
Yeah. He collaborates with Mike Park. Him and Mike Park are buddies.
That's cute.
I thought I heard that.
Nice. Yeah.
I heard they were doing another album or a follow-up, or maybe I didn't. I don't know. It seemed like the EP was so short, but I thought I heard that there was more in the works, but it seems like it could be the thing that maybe doesn't happen too.
Well, and he wrote and recorded that by himself with permission from the original band lineup to put it out under the Classics of Love name, but it is more so a Jesse Michaels solo record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or EP. Yeah.
I was just saying, I think it's another one that's not on streaming services aside from Bandcamp, actually. The most recent one, maybe it is now. I think at first, though, it was that World of Burning Hate EP. I think it was only on Bandcamp, but I could be wrong.
Did you find it elsewhere or no?
For Classics of Love? Oh,
yeah.
No,
I
cannot remember. I have no idea.
Oops.
Bandcamp it is.
Well, Bandcamp's good.
Yeah.
It is.
Nothing wrong with Bandcamp.
Yeah. Just you have
Wait
to
till Bandcamp Friday. Buy it on Bandcamp Friday.
Oh, they get more percentage of
get all the
everything.
money.
They get all the money. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do that for all bands.
Yeah, exactly.
So why don't we play a game?
Yeah.
You ready?
Okay. Robert loves his stupid little games.
Jigsaw likes his stupid little games. All right, here we go. Act 1. I was sitting and thinking of the band and the name that they've chose. I'm going to sue them for their hair, their dog, and their clothes. This is the world, and if they don't like it, then their shit is tough. They should have come up with an original name instead of ripping us off. I kind of did it.
Okay,
that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
This is called My Lawyers Will Hear About This. And in this game, so Celine, Joey, and Brian will be given a band name, and it is their job to tell which other band they took their name from. So I'll give you, I know that's a little tricky, but the example would be the band Classics of Love. The answer would be Common Rider, because Common Rider had a song called Classics of Love. Right?
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. And so I'll just name the band, but if you can't get it, I'll give a tiny clue.
Okay.
And whoever gets the most points wins. You can buzz in with your name or ska or buzz or whatever. Most points wins.
Ska, buzz.
Yeah. You can say them all. That's totally fine. Okay. And I try to make it so they get progressively more difficult. They start easy, I think. Okay. Well, I think. I've been wrong about this in the past. Okay. Madness.
I'm sure you.
Well, we
I'm
did
sure
an
you
entire
we
month
did,
about
we did
this.
and you definitely mentioned it. I'm sure. They got their name from another band name.
Yes, from another band
Um,
song.
another. Damn it! I like.
Yeah. Al Capone's guns can't touch him. He's ska royalty.
Oh,
Celine Ska'd.
Okay,
King
yes.
Buster.
Well, so close.
Prince Buster.
Yes, Prince.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Prince Buster.
So Madness is a
King
Prince
Buster.
Buster song.
whew, off to a good start.
Madness. They call it
I got
madness.
stressed.
Celine.
Yeah, I saw that. All right, second one. The new wave band ABC.
Ska Joey.
Yes.
The alphabet song.
No.
Ska, the Jackson
Yeah.
5.
Correct.
Whoa,
Oh,
nice. I wouldn't have thought like that would be related.
Yeah, they're not related. They don't sound anything like each other, but they did it. Number 3. This might be an alley-oop for Joey. Poison.
Joey
Yeah.
Scorpions.
No, but that's a
No?
good guess.
Alice Cooper? Ska?
No, not Alice Cooper. Celine, do you have a
I'm
guess?
trying to think of who would be like the predecessor
So,
for Poison.
Here we go. Complete this sentence. All the other kids with their pumped up.
Kicks?
Celine.
Yes.
Skaba's a Kiss.
No.
Kicks?
I'm gonna give it to Brian because he.
I
said
don't
it
even
right.
know the band Kicks.
Kicks. Kicks.
I did not know. Yeah.
Yes, they are a late 70s glam metal
I
prototype
thought you were
band.
being
So-
funny and like saying Kicks, but then it was really Kiss.
And guess how it's spelled? K-I-X.
K-I-X.
Yes,
For sure.
Yes.
KIX.
Had to be.
Mhm.
Had to be.
Had to be. Okay, Celine.
Checks.
Living End.
Oh, I don't even know.
Oh, you could take a really educated guess.
Oh, Celine Ska Buzz.
Yeah.
Does it have something to do with Stray Cats?
Yeah, it is the Stray Cat.
Yeah. My hint was I could take an educated guess.
Yeah. All right. Number 5. The thrash metal band Overkill.
Ska
Ska.
Joey.
Oh.
That delay was like basically a tie, though.
I'll give it up to Brian because of the guest.
Yeah.
Motorhead?
Yes.
Dang, I knew that one too.
That hurt Joey.
Number 6. Punk band Bad Brains.
I don't know where they would have gotten their name from.
Yeah,
This is
geez.
fun. We have mentioned them once on this podcast. You may
One
think
time?
this episode specifically,
Oh.
not in general.
Oh.
You may think this 77 band hasn't aged well, but
Ramones?
punks. Yes.
Ah.
There is a Ramon song called Bad Brain,
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
not Bad Brains.
Right. But there's multiple members of the band, so they
Yes. So they
All
are bad.
have
They
bad
all
brains.
have bad brains. There you go.
don't we all?
Number 7, goth rock band The Sisters of Mercy.
Ska?
Yep,
Is it Leonard Cohen?
it is Leonard Cohen.
Oh,
CanCon, baby.
Okay.
Wow.
All right, number 8, Seether.
Oh,
Alt rock band
Celine
Seether.
Ska
Oh,
Buzz.
Celine,
Is it
yeah.
from Veruca Salt?
It is. They,
Yeah.
yes.
Can't
Really?
fight the sea
Yes.
there.
They named themselves after the Veruca Salt song.
This is
That is-
blowing my mind.
that is not unrelated.
it's a good
Number
song.
9. I do like that song. I like
Yeah.
Veruca Salt. I think we've talked about how much we like Veruca Salt.
Yeah, we're all
We're all
Veruca Salt
big
fans.
Veruca Salt fans. Number 9, Radiohead.
I'm like, what would they like?
Joey.
Yes.
Blur?
Nope. No, I think you're going too late. Gotta
Yeah, I
be
guess
good.
they would have been kind of
Yeah.
contemporaries, hey?
They would
Yeah.
have been like at the same time.
Yeah,
so who
yeah,
was
yeah.
before them?
So my hint is a hipster band from the 90s worships a hipster band from the 80s.
Well, I knew that. But which one?
Celine Ska
Rob?
Buzz.
Yes.
Devo.
That's a good guess.
Yeah, that's just a pure guess from
It's
what
not
your
UK
hint was.
enough, though, I don't think.
Well, this is not a UK band. They're a New York band. I guess the
Oh,
only
okay.
the only hint I'll say is think big suit.
Talking Heads, but do they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
It's
wondering.
radio.
Good one.
Head.
Yeah.
Spelled differently. It's Radiohead.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Talking Heads. They have a song called Radiohead.
okay.
Yes. It's not related to the band name. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Yeah. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Yeah.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Oh, back to French again.
Psycho killer.
All right. Number 10. Stiff little fingers.
Oh shit. Fuck, I should know this.
You should, Celine.
I do know this. It's like Stiff Little Fingers it's off of a 77 punk band.
That's correct.
But which one?
The one that's Pure Mania.
Celine.
Yes.
It's not Dead Boys. No.
No.
Pure Mania?
Shit, I know this. This sucks. It's like not.
If my wife is editing this episode, she's
sewing,
throwing her laptop against the wall right now.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
don't
one of
know
her
this one.
favorite bands.
No band is coming to me right now.
The
New York.
Vibrators.
Oh, the Vibrators.
Oh,
the Vibrators. The
of
Vibrators.
course.
The Vibrators. Sorry, Arianne.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now we got a couple more. Okay, number 11. Garage rock revival band Jet.
Ska'd?
Yeah.
Is it the band? Paul McCartney, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, Band
You are
on the
cor-
Run.
Yep, that one.
Wings.
That band's called
Wings.
Yes.
I'm
That's
gonna
a point
we'll
five
give it
for
to
both.
you, though, for sure.
Yeah.
I was
0.5
thinking of
for
Band on the Run, so I was like, Paul McCartney and the band? No, it's Paul McCartney and Wings.
Wings is correct. All right, we're getting to the last two. Number 12. It looks a lot like Brian's running away with it.
I have
I have a few points,
Yeah,
right?
and I have 0.
You got a few. Yeah, Joey's not even on the board.
Nope.
Birthday boy.
Maybe I'll get one.
Number 12. The Rolling Stones.
Scott?
Celine, Ska Buzz.
Oh, you go. I was second.
Okay,
for sure.
I don't even know. Is it like off of the song? Like
Off of
Is it
the song. Yeah.
now I'm too stressed. Everyone's
okay.
looking. Well, it's like is it Mama or Papa in the Rolling Stone? Like what is their song like that says that's old? Okay, Brian, have a real answer. Have a real answer.
Muddy Waters.
Is Muddy Waters, yes. I only put it on there so that I could write this joke here for the clue, which was blues worshipping British invasion band meets Peppa Pig's favorite thing.
Does Peppa Pig love Muddy? Just because he is a pig?
Is a pig.
No, she talks about muddy puddles.
water?
Muddy puddles.
Muddy puddles.
Yeah. Which I thought was funny when I wrote it.
I'm sure you did.
It's good.
Don't encourage him, Brian.
All right, last one. This is only for those that know it. Death Cab for Cutie.
Oh,
And
boy.
here's my hint. You're not going to get it.
Damn it!
If you
I
don't
thought it
know
was.
it, you're not
I
gonna
thought
get
it was like a book, like Billy Talent or something, or a
Billy
movie.
Talent
I thought it was.
from Hardcore Logo.
I thought it was a movie.
Yeah.
CanCon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
30%.
I don't.
30%.
I do
Yeah.
not know the answer to this.
The band is called the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band.
Ooh,
Wow.
that's a
Oh,
tough one.
I knew that.
Bonzo
I love
Dog
the Bonzo
Doodah
Dog
Band.
Doodah Band.
Everyone's
Favorite
favorite.
Are
band.
we gonna do a
I have them
trombonist
tattooed.
episode about
Yeah.
that band?
We'll do a trombonist on Bonzo Dog Doodah Band.
Bonzo Dog Doodah Band.
Brian got
crushed
8
it.
points.
Yeah.
8 points. Nice. Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
Well done. Your check's in the mail. All right. Let's close up the episode with everybody's favorite segment. Question the answers.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
From
And
the
some
Discord.
people
The
got
Discord was
excited.
Oh yeah,
popping
there's some
off.
like nerdy ass questions.
Yeah, I hope you're excited
Brian,
for.
I'm a
aimed at you.
nerdy ass person. So
As it turns out, this may seem kind of crazy, but like people who play horns well into their adult years also tend to do education stuff with horns.
I feel like a lot of people who play horns do like take music
Yeah.
in school.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Horns, you don't just play a trumpet after high school and like a guitar. You know what I mean?
No.
You don't
Yeah.
just noodle on your saxophone after
going to
you
bed.
stop taking lessons. Yeah. Like,
And you don't end up in like a.
Not plugged, but you don't plug it in. You don't plug it in.
You're not in just somebody's dorm room. And they're like, oh, what's that laying over there? Saxophone. 1 second.
Around the fire, they're like,
Campfire.
"Oh shit, you have a saxophone here."
Yeah. What's that? Oh, yeah, let's jam, guys.
and
You
then
grab
it's-
the cowbell.
And then it's the Lost Boys guy again by the fire.
All right. So Flip on the Discord says, from one Ska educator to another, what's one of your favorite stories from the classroom? Students being funny, personal flubs, etc. So Flip is he has a teacher themed Ska EP.
Nice. Oh man, there's so many examples. one thing that did catch me off guard in sort of a fun way once was I was looking at kind of first wave ska, talking a little bit about two-tone and second wave in the 80s. And we were talking a lot about like, the UK and working class Britons and diaspora from, Jamaica and elsewhere, and how it's all interwoven into the music. And I often don't get a lot of questions about ska beyond that. But I had one student once like really curious about how the third wave fits within the chronology, I guess. And it was a good opportunity to go into that a little bit more. I've also
Everyone else leaves. Everyone else left the classroom.
Yeah. And then you started talking about Fishbone. You were like, mass exodus.
I think too, like, I mean, in terms of like favorite things in the classroom, there's lots, but it's been fun watching in recent years. Like, you never know what students are going to have as like cultural touchstones and stuff for their era. And there's so many Sublime shirts on campus right now. I don't know. It's just like, there's a huge resurgence. And
it's fun. The Nirvana, like the Sublime, it's interesting to see like what bands are. Well, the most surprising to me is all the Slipknot and Korn shirts, but
totally, yeah,
anyways,
it's
the Sublime comeback is interesting
for sure. But I think like in terms of favorites, I love like sometimes I give options to make audio work instead of essays, and I've had some amazing like kind of radio playlist submissions, some that have even been kind of on like the history of like pop punk or whatever, things that like students were really into. And I just love listening to that kind of stuff and have them talk about music in a way that's both like passionate but also critical and reflexive. And I just really, really enjoy that kind of stuff.
Hey, that's what we do here.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
yeah, come on anytime.
Exactly. I'll just send all my students to the podcast.
Yeah,
Yes,
don't.
please do.
Oh, I said don't. For their sake.
For their sake, yeah.
Not
for us. We'll do anything.
For their sake.
That actually kind of dovetails to another question from Echub on the Discord. He asks, how much academic work is currently being done on contemporary pop music? I know music theorists are into 300-year-old Europeans and 100-year-old jazz cats, but is there room for a serious analysis of, say, pop punk?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think within, I came up through like media studies and communication studies, and my job is specifically popular music studies. And within that, like a lot of people who do pop music would be looking at all sort of questions around contemporary music industry stuff that pop punk could fit into. I don't, off the top of my head, know a lot of, I have to think a little bit more about stuff written recently on pop punk. But in terms of pop music, there's lots of looking at, how the industry changes, questions around ownership, different things around record labels, distribution, what that means for pop music. There's tons of that work going on, which is good. But I'll think a little bit more about stuff on pop punk, and if anything comes to mind, I'll jump back in. But in terms of just stuff on pop music, there's lots, and even in musicology now, there's a lot of like people looking at popular music or ethnomusicology, popular music, and doing interviews with people and things like that. So it's definitely out there.
Cool. My wife has a question. I had to do it.
You didn't.
CanCon question from me. I would like to hear Brian's thoughts on the impact of Sirius dropping CBC music and the impact it will have on royalties. Seems like a huge drop, and coupled with the pittance streaming offers, how can Canadian musicians afford to make music?
Yeah, I think that's a question that a lot of people have, in at least like online, a lot of artists and people working in the industry have been talking about over the last little while. Because for those who may not know, if you're on even if you're on the Canadian stations on Sirius XM, I think it's like 1 for every 10 channels on the service has to be Canadian, and a handful of those 10 were music channels, and they're 24/7, and they have to play a certain percentage of like quote unquote emerging and new releases, which meant that they would fill a lot of that space with like a pretty wide variety of music, more so than what you would get on like commercial radio. But when Sound Exchange came into play, which allocates royalties for services like Pandora and SiriusXM, it calculates like how many people could potentially be listening. It's across the border. It's North America. So the amount somebody makes per play is huge, like compared to like what you get from a stream, which is calculated more like one person listening alone. And with like the contracts through record labels, it's much, much less. So a lot of artists were doing pretty well when they would have something in rotation on Sirius XM, and that could be on another station too, but often the Canadian ones would be much more wide open. So CBC Radio 3 is gone, but there
Sad.
still is Canadian music channels, but I'm not sure yet if I don't know yet if they're going to replace Radio 3 with like their own in-house kind of alternative independent channel. They released a new hip hop one that would still have that emerging and new percentage, which is great for hip hop artists. And there's an Indigenous artist channel still going. So that is unchanged. And there's like the Verge and Iceberg or something like that, that play Canadian music too, but they're without that kind of like public radio mandate, which CBC Radio 3 had. And CBC Music has been getting more varied in the genres they've been playing over the last little while. So it is a loss to have that public mandate on there. But I think at the same time, it's also pretty dire to rely on that as just like the one source of income. And I think it points to there's way more problems to sort out and keep working towards. So hopefully, it's part of a larger conversation about how to make things more equitable across the board.
Yeah, we got to figure something out because it just seems so hard to be profitable as like a small to medium sized band. Like even people that are like quite big and play and tour, like everybody has full-time, day jobs and like it's wild.
It is.
And so actually that kind of points to this next question, and it's a bit of a long one, but I feel like I should read the whole thing. So this is from MF Bone on the Discord as well. We saw the music industry struggle to find its footing amidst the pandemic, with the lockdowns essentially putting a halt to many of the ways established musicians typically made their money and gained exposure in the pre-internet music industry. Yet at the same time, we saw somewhat of a boom in DIY artists that have thrived through the internet, social media, and streaming. What other long-term and short-term effects do you think the pandemic has caused or could foresee causing in this post-lockdown pandemic era we're in regarding the music industry? And how have you seen musicians and those associated with the industry adapt?
I think one other thing that's definitely on my mind, and probably a lot of other people's minds too, is like when you start to see the news of bands that you think to be doing pretty well, like canceling tours because they can't afford to, like Santa Gold and the Animal Collective, a bunch of other bands.
That's a bummer. Santa Gold, sweet.
Yeah, and I think realizing that even at that level, there are huge barriers.
And they feel big. Like
they do feel big. They have, I think the cost of touring has gone up too, whereas that's where a lot of bands made their money, right? On the road, streaming could be somewhere where you take a loss, but you make it up touring. But now everything's gotten quite expensive, whether it's gas or renting buses and travel. So I think, as you've seen it with the Taylor Swift, Live Nation, and Ticketmaster stuff, I think more people are paying attention to the fact that there's like one company in every aspect of the music industry is controlling a lot of things, and realizing that has to change and be broken up, and things need to be diversified more. And you can't have that much corporate control over so many avenues in the music industry and still have like a thriving music ecosystem where people can afford to do it. So I think there's gonna be a lot more attention to things like monopolies, like the Live Nation Ticketmaster thing, charging Taylor Swift fans a ton of money and not being able to even facilitate the ticket purchasing system. I think these larger sort of online social media movements around creating awareness for how dire the situation can get. I think that might be this kind of post-pandemic thing that potentially leads to, I don't know, hopefully new avenues, more diversification. Yeah.
And I guess that's the positive, is that we're so connected on social media that like we're a lot more likely to like be exposed. And like I feel like it was like a capitalism had an easier time, and monopolies had an easier time pre social media, because like it's so much easier to be like, hey, and people making TikToks being like, see how shitty this is, like there's one company like doing this, like it's a lot easier to get that information out, and then hopefully like expose, like we need other options to support in the first place. But I think if there were other options, people would want to support it, because we know now that those companies do suck.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's why I got my tickets to Blink 182 for $700.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
I had to.
yeah,
I
too.
definitely had to. This sounds like the most bomb lineup, the original one.
I saw him.
That
I've
was-
seen this
that was
lineup.
Scott Rayner.
Yeah, that's true.
No, Scott Rayner. Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked about Cheshire Cat with Davey Havoc one time, which is my weirdest name
yeah?
drop. No, with Jade Pudgett. Sorry, the
Okay.
other guy in AFI. Who once said, he's like, this is my favorite Blink 182 record because I think Scott Rayner thinks he's playing on a different album.
That's so good.
Anyway, with that, thanks for joining us today, Brian. Let me throw it over to you. Do you have anything to plug?
I mean, not really. I think
That demo of your band is on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. I'll pin that to the top of my Twitter feed.
Listen.
Yeah, I'll put it on the top of my Twitter feed. I think it's kind of
That'd
like
be awesome.
in the vein of like Your Choking Victim, Leftover Crack Sound. It's kind of got, that scarred core sound to it, but I think it sounds, the recording production sounds good enough still. So I'll definitely put that out there. And I think that the whole band would appreciate, you have like an active ska fan audience,
Yes.
which is great. And we put that out on YouTube a year ago without that sort of connection. So I think that, if people want to check that out, that would be awesome.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Do you tweet about music stuff?
Oh yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
And
So
other
your
silly stuff
what's
too.
what's your Twitter handle?
Just my name at
Okay.
Brian Fauteux with no things in it. Just very simple. Yeah.
That's me too, which I kind of like. I keep being like, how do
That's me
people know
too.
my name? And then I'm like, oh right, it's there. I actually asked someone, they're like, it's your handle, and I'm like, all right.
It's a handle. Yeah. I don't know how much longer we'll have Twitter for, but I will.
was just about to say.
I know.
I think even if it
It'll
goes down,
stay.
it'll get picked up. I think it'll. If I'm gonna be honest, I think he sucks, and it sucks, but like, it'll stay.
And they reinstated
probably.
Trump's Twitter account. Isn't that exciting?
But he doesn't. Yeah. He's like, he
Dude,
doesn't want to
I've
come.
been blocking.
Yeah, he doesn't want to
I've been
come.
blocking so much stuff. Like I honestly, I when you scroll in my blocked list now, because I've gone hardcore blocking any promoted
I'm seeing
tweet
more
at all.
bots. I'm seeing a
I know.
lot more
And
bots.
So many
anything,
bots.
anything that's
Yeah.
been paid for, instant block for me. And I wanted to see if I could get a number of how many blocks I had. And like when you scroll it like has to load. I have so many. Like it just I nonstop. Like sometimes Twitter will throw ads at me like in succession, and I'll block like a dozen things within 4 or 5 minutes. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. It's the best way to do it. Yeah. So I pinned it, and I'm going to add a little note to it, say like, this is here for a little while in case, people into ska want to check it out and learn a little bit about the suburbs of Toronto in 2002, 2001.
Hey, one thing we've found out
Follow
is that
him on Twitter.
a lot of ska Twitter is very stoked on finding kind of this lost media.
That's why I'm like, I feel
That's
like
awesome.
our listeners would be into it.
Yeah.
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 Sean, one of the guitarists from the Blue Meanies, just put out like, what was it? Like an old demo or like one of his old bands, like just something he had lying around. And it's awesome. And people
Nice.
were fucking pumped on it. And it was just very cool to put something out 25 years later,
Yeah.
And this is a little tease, but the band that we're going to interview next week, they want to talk about a band. We'll see if we still do it, called Too Short Notice, that just put all their stuff back up on
Nice.
streaming about a month ago. And they're like a local Jersey band from the same era.
Cool.
And so, people are like excited for when all the stuff comes back up, and it's available either on Bandcamp, streaming, YouTube. It doesn't really matter. People will find it once it's out there, which is awesome.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Totally awesome.
So hit us up on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at Checkered Past Pod, or send us an email at checkeredpastpod@gmail.com. To support the pod and get bonus content, including a full-length and unedited video of this episode, sign up for the Checkerhead Patreon at patreon.com/checkeredpast. We also have merch available at checkeredpast.ca. Checkered Past is edited by Arianne and engineered by Joey. And until next time, I'm Rob.
Celine.
And the immortal words of Kamen Rider, walk through a beehive, never get stung.
Motherfucker.